when Ian kind of talked to me about it.
And I remember listening to when The Pleasure and the Greed first came out.
Cool.
I don't know why, but I thought Forrest is somewhere in Florida selling real estate. That's what he's doing.
God damn it. The best part of the drums, I didn't even play.
You did. You did.
No, you did. You did.
It was repurposed.
We're just waiting on Jack Burton.
Jack Burton. Who was that?
That was the project we did together. Jack is sideways.
Jack is back.
Jack, that's very appropriate.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. Pretty cool drums behind you. What are those?
Yeah, so that's my Tama Rockstar, which I bought with cymbals, snare, stands for $250. And this is my my hybrid kit. Toms are Yamaha. This bass drum is a 24-inch by 14 Gretsch, oversized, so the skins don't properly fit on them. And snares just, I think this is the one that came with the Tama, I believe. Yeah, because I don't use Evans heads. Of course, you got to have a giant beat. That's a 24-inch, 20-inch AAX, and this is a 19-inch HHX, and these are cheapo Sabians. So cheapo top, and then a very expensive bottom. Those are 2001s. The other cool thing is that I'm dampening the room using extra mattresses and box springs we had around. The room came with, this kind of cardboardish ceiling tile. It's the classic drop ceiling. That's as close to like those 60s, 50s and 60s jazz recording, like for the small room type jazz. Giant Steps would be in a room that's basically all this kind of compressed cardboard with little holes in it, or at least that's what I've seen in picture and in video.
And I see you got the band T-shirt on. I have a T-shirt too, and it's great, but I don't think I'm ever gonna wear it. I was thinking if we did a little contest, or maybe like 3 or 4 questions from the interview that people would have to watch the interview to answer, they can have my T-shirt.
Why not wear it? Why not wear it? What's the deal?
Well, that's what I thought, really. I mean, come on.
I couldn't find it. That's my excuse.
You could.
And so, Matt, how did you meet me and Big Rec? How did that all come about?
Well, I was a sitting duck at a little studio called Present Sound in Toronto, and it was kind of a back alley place. We didn't have a lot of money or a receptionist. That's when they bought that Neve 8014, which is a 16 input Neve with 4 subgroups and a stereo master, all 1272 line inputs. And then they had, the standard collection of mics. They had, the right amount of Sennheiser 421s, a pair of 414s. When we started, it was we're using an Akai 12 track. It's kind of like these videotapes. It's analog, but you put in these like chunky, big rectangular videotapes, and you load it down like this. Then it wraps it around the heads, and you record. After about 3 plays of your music, the tape was oxidizing so badly that you'd have to stop it, take the tape out, clean the heads, just to make one more playback to do a mix down. Yeah, that was a bit panicky. And then one of the guys got a job at a place called Manta Sound in Toronto. They're one of the big institutions in what I would call, I guess, Studio Alley in Toronto. That's kind of like Adelaide, Richmond, east of Yonge Street, if anyone knows the area. He was working there. One of their oldest machines, which they had decommissioned for at least a couple of years at that point. They wanted to sell it. So we actually bought it. We kind of went in on it together. It was 20 grand, and all the sessions I did from there kind of helped pay that machine off.
And that was a Studer A80?
Yeah, Studer A80. It said Mark IV on it, like IV, but there was some question as to whether the electronics might have been more Mark II, because it had a very slow punch out, but they had done a mod to increase the speed of the punch in, so that so you can do like razor sharp punch ins. Like you could even punch in an S, but if you punch in an S, you actually have to hit stop instead of punch out to ensure that your out is really, really tight. So anyway, we had that machine, and the management trust had found out about us and sent a few kind of demo sessions our way, like the Watchman and I forget who else, but like a Tragically Hip, come by for a day and kind of jam there with their sound guy just to kind of rehearse their live show in a way.
So the management trust that they were famously managers of Tragically Hip and the Watchmen. So the Watchmen did their demo with you. I forgot about that.
Well, that was a little later in the game, but they had come in with their sound engineer once, and they just spent a day just kind of noodling around because like their sound engineer was a live guy, so he was freaking out at the sound of our. We actually had an AMS reverb, which is a pretty pricey super 80s reverb. Like all that, yeah, like all that weird kind of Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush stuff had lots of RMX on it. Anyway, one thing led to another, and Chris Wardman found out about us because he knew about the Neve name, and there weren't a lot of small rooms or any rooms really that had vintage Neve because they weren't quite popular yet. So by about 92, 93, we started getting Chris coming in to do the odd demo. So when I worked with him, we just sort of started getting the sound together. He brought in a ton of tools that we didn't have, like the Compex F760, the
famous when the levy breaks compressor.
Well, that's what they say. They say that was the one. And I mean, when you hear it, you can believe it.
Oh yeah, it has a distinct sound.
Yeah, it actually just by passing signal through it, it seems to comb the sound and make it more hi-fi sounding. So even if you're barely touching the compressor, you get this like beautiful kind of punch and wisp all at the same time. It kind of brightens the highs in a gentle way, and it compacts the mids and makes this sort of clear punch. There's probably a dip around, who knows, 300 hertz, 200 hertz. That's just naturally in the electronics. So whenever you hear the unit, you automatically think, wow, that's quality, or you don't like it because you're into some, like you wouldn't use it on a jazz session.
But we liked it a lot. And
we did.
After the Big Wreck album, who was it that like bought up all the Compex compressors that were in town?
The infamous Gavin Brown. The only reason you would do that is so that no one else can use them.
So yeah, Chris was really into Neve. He actually had a tiny little Neve board, one of those tiny ones. It's even smaller than the BCM 10. Did we ever work with Chris without you?
You did. You worked at, I think, Howlem Music with Pete Hudson, and Pete is another one of the unsung heroes and didn't even get a credit for recording Fall Through the Cracks. So Fall Through the Cracks was recorded at Howlem Music with Pete Hudson, which is why it has a uniquely different sound.
Right.
But Wardman, he and we just had fun. Like whenever we recorded, we just had fun. There's certain things that he didn't care about, I cared about a lot. For example, when he first put the PZMs down on the floor for the first client that we worked with, which was actually, it was either Zen Bungalow or maybe it was Rusty. Anyway, we did a bunch of stuff, but I'm thinking Rusty might have been the first one where he brought in those realistic PZMs. He brought in a pair. So his PZMs were kind of hot rodded. And the way he would engineer, because he's actually a great engineer, a bit messy. He doesn't have the discipline of someone who started, through the internship programs, and
I remember him just going and be like, yeah, that sounds good.
Totally, that was his style. He'd turn up the NS10s as loud as possible, and then just start cranking EQs, and I would just stand back holding my ears while he did that. But then eventually he'd go, okay, I'm done. What do you think? And I'm like, well, I think it's cool, but I don't think it's quite sonically perfect. I had a different vision because I was into more like really purist stuff, like big band recordings and jazz recordings and all the best kind of, I guess Led Zeppelin was kind of big band influenced in its sound. So like, I liked that stuff, how it was like, it was pushing the envelope as far as you could probably push it, but then it was just controlled enough that you had a beautiful sonic picture.
Right.
And Chris's thing was, just make it sound as crazy as possible, which I loved.
Yeah, there's some definite chaos in his sound, and I could see that. That's a perfect example of Chris. He was just such a nice person, just kind of went for it, and that big smile. And I could see him backing up and being like, okay, I know I didn't do it perfect. Now you put your thing in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he was always kind of an egalitarian leader. He always assumed the leader position. He was always respected by the client while in session, and yeah, we had a good time. Even with the PZMs, right? He would literally walk in with two PZM, one in each hand like this, and he would just throw them in front of the drum set. They would they practically land on our granite floor.
Oh my god!
Right? And that's where he'd leave them, right? So when I was listening to the imaging of the first time that he did this, I was like, the imaging's off. So I would go out and I would slide his mics around to a spot where I was getting a perfect stereo image from the drum set. And then I would, go back and he would always say, "Oh yeah, whatever you did, that sounds better." Same with when he'd reef the EQs, and then I just pull it back just a hair. Yeah. And then he'd go, "Oh yeah, that sounds better. Cool." But I was getting his intention without, ruining the fun for him, basically.
And then, so you must have taken some of the things that you learned from him and used them on the session when he wasn't there, because we used PZMs in the one when Chris wasn't there, right?
That's right. We actually, I actually bought a Compex F760. It was about $2,500 Canadian. It was in decent shape. Still, those two central stereo, like the master stereo knobs, were always messed up on every version of those, where like once it had aged, you had to park it in one spot where it wouldn't crackle and then leave it. And if you ever touched it again, the crackle would come back, the left and right would shift. It was a hard compressor to deal with. So luckily it had two sets of controls. It had stereo in, stereo out, and then it had individual left in, and then left out, right out. So you had a lot of control with the thing. You didn't have to mess with those once you had them roughly set.
So what did you run through the Compex, the PZMs or the?
Well, the thing is when you guys came, I had actually already bought a set of PZMs because of the Rusty sessions. What else did we do? Zen Bungalow, the Shadow Puppets, like all these, like, I guess, indie B bands. And so I had a pair of PZMs, and then when we worked with you guys, he had a pair, I had a pair. So he was like, "Oh, you have a pair?" He goes, "Let's put them all up." So I go, "Well, of course. What else would you do?" So your setup took up 14 inputs of the 16 that we had. So then we had one more input for a click and one more for Ian's guitar. We were jamming it. So what happened was we had this big, like 4 foot by 8 foot piece of maple with a frame around it. And we stuck it on the wall. Like we just leaned it up against the wall opposite your drums. And then we screwed in 2 of the PZMs as wide as we could get them on that in front of your kit. And then we had the other 2 PZMs lying on the floor right in front of the kit, like within 2 feet, basically, kind of surrounding the bass drum. And so then those 4 signals were combined into a subgroup and then jammed through the Compex. And then Wardman and DiMatteo compressed, or compressed and then fixed compressed. I don't know what you call it.
Right.
I don't criticize Chris because he's a genius.
Why wasn't Chris involved in the last session?
Don't know, other than when Ian kind of talked to me about it, he did. I don't think he liked Chris necessarily, and it might have been just clash of the egos in a way. Like I sort of had more of this blues background, and Chris had more of this kind of like 80s, avant-garde and punk rock background. And I think that he could hear the difference working with me as an engineer and working with anyone else, even with Chris producing, right? So with Chris producing at Howla, it had a totally different sound. But Chris producing with me, we got this kind of brand new sound, Plus, like I had the kick drum that was not popular, and it sat in Songbird for a while, and I was lucky to snatch it. It was a 1949 Leedy 24 by 14, and I just put standard bass drum heads on it, and I thought, wow, this fucking drum sounds cool. And I was resistant to even putting a hole in it, but I really wanted to get a mic in there just to feel that point more defined, in the 90s way. So it was kind of like, it was that decision, like be a total purist or kind of try to find this mix. So I always made the hole in the kick as small as I possibly could to get either a D12E, an AKG D12E, or the AKG D112 in it. So as long as I could get one either just in the hole, pointing at the, so it's sort of out of the hole, but the but the face of the mic is just inside, pointing at the beater, or stick it right inside the drum. I needed to be able to do both.
You were talking about the bass drum and getting a D12 in the hole, just inside the hole, halfway in, halfway out, pointed at the beater. And I know that pretty well because I do that because you told me to. But and Chris Wardman wasn't on the last session because
I think
he just kind of wanted. Ian thought that you would be a better fit for us.
Well, you know what? Honestly, it would allow a co-production. He didn't say as much, but you know what I mean? It would allow for him to have a lot more say. And, fuck me, Ian's a genius too. There's no, I'm not saying he's not, or Chris is more or less. It was just, I think Ian wanted to go more hard rock blues rather than more strange and indie sounding. And I think,
that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I think it was just a better fit going forward. I forgot about. I don't even know if I knew any of that was happening. Again, I don't even remember that first studio and recording Fall Through the Cracks somewhere else. I just assumed everything was happening at present. I guess it was so long ago, and I was consuming too much of your famous beer, Canadian.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
the Triple X. That's like Triple X because more alcohol.
Americans traditionally have a lot of extra fun once they find Canadian beer for the first time.
Yeah, I think I did. I think it influenced a few of my messy fills on that first record.
Well, you know what? Why shouldn't it? I mean, wasn't John Bonham drunk the whole time?
Oh God. Well, you can't be completely drunk, but you can be pretty buzzed and have a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a line you can't
start. Yeah, like I think my philosophy is this: if you start playing before your first beer and you're warmed up, and then you start to add beer, the playing actually gets better over time. But if you show up drunk and try to warm up drunk, then you're going to have a bad session.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah, that's how I think it works. It's like if you get pretty drunk and then someone out back of the club says, "Hey man, want to smoke a joint?" and then you do, and you're fucked.
I smoked a lot of weed in my day. It never mixed with playing for me, unless I was like just recording maybe like my own song, like some like acoustic guitar song. Yeah. So I did write Under the Lighthouse really high.
Well, that kind of makes sense because it's got that feel.
Yeah. So with that kind of stuff, but playing drums, like I can play really simple, but playing like the drums and big wreck on stage, I could never be high or any kind of drug at all. So yeah, the bass drum that you were talking about, this 24 inches. I mean, you're the reason I use bigger drums, and I always I came into the studio with a DW kit.
Yeah,
it was relatively new. It was it was early 90s DW blue with a 22-inch kick, and then you put this thing in front of me. I'm not sure if it was one you were talking about exactly, but it was at least a 24, if not a 26, and I was just like, oh my God. This is what I want to hear when I hit my bass drum. Like this changes everything. Like it just, like you said, that particular drum had this big sound. It just influenced what I played, and it changed me forever. Now I use a 28.
Oh, was it a 28 now?
That's what you just mixed.
Holy Lord.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I have a drum that's set up to your specifications for when we did Jack Burton and
right. Well, that's a different drum. Shit.
And then I ended up going back to the 28 because I just liked the way it sounded in the room, and especially for the track that we just did, it was just like boom, boom, ka, and
exactly
just kind of fit the song. But I have like 5-6 different bass drums that I choose depending on what the song kind of makes me want to hear.
That's pretty cool.
After working with us, the album comes out, pretty big success. How did that change your life going forward? And
I'd say the most profound change was that when I went to industry parties like EMI, Mike McCarty, you remember that guy? Mike used to have his rooftop party at the building that EMI Publishing was in, and so I was invited to one of those parties probably a year after it came out. And so when I got in there, I was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna get a beer, and then I might meet some ladies, and I might see some people that I know. I was never into meeting the bigwigs. I never went running for the bigwigs or other producers. I didn't care. I just wanted to meet people who were nice. That was kind of my vibe. And so when I went to this party, some fucking guy said, hey, that's Matt Matteo. He's the guy who did the Big Reg thing. And man, I was swarmed by young, pimply-faced male nerd looking. So from then on, every time I went to a party, I'd be surrounded by young male nerds.
Like me asking you, like, oh yeah, how big was the bass drum? Where'd you put the microphone? And you're like, oh, I just wanted to meet some girls, and I got to answer all these stupid questions.
Yeah, kind of, and I was always, kind of nice about it, except once in a while I'd be like, I got to get out of here. And I would kind of escape. I'd leave the party altogether because, it was the wrong kind of celebrity that I was hoping for. Like, where's all the ladies? So after that, business wise, certain management people started to call me up, and one of them was Bob Lutella. God bless him. He passed away this year, sadly. I miss him. I wish we had sewn up some of our differences, because we didn't end on the best note, but I wish we did. He came at me with, first of all, I think it was Glue Leg was one of his bands. So he came at me with Glue Leg. We did a little project, and then along came Edwin, the now solo artist Edwin, under Sony. And actually Ruben was a big part of the Edwin thing, because he wrote a lot of his early demos with him. I think for Edwin, it was like being in a band again. And if you were in I Mother Earth, you were known as this kind of super innovative Canadian band. Like they had that 90s sound, and then something a little different, definitely a tribute to their popularity. And I mean, Edwin, he's not the best singer. He's not the worst singer. He was willing to work hard, and he's so handsome that everyone was after him,
Absolutely.
And he's a good performer. He's confident with people. After hanging out with Edwin, we went to a hockey game, and he spent the whole hockey game taking pictures with fans. Like he's actually he's a pretty sweet guy that way. He really took care of his fans. And I watched the hockey game alone.
Doesn't anyone want to take a picture with me?
No, I think I was too shy and insecure for that kind of thing. Like, not that I was an insecure person, but like given the choice of here you are, you're famous, what do you do? Well, I mic things, and I suggest for things for people to play differently. That's nothing to be swarmed about, really. Now, of course, I'm also a musician and a writer, and I do, I probably have 200 or 300 songs that I've either written myself or co-written at this. I'm not saying they're all good, but they exist, and I still keep trying to hone the writing craft. It's fun, primarily.
Yeah, writing is the most. That's the thing I respect the most. Is I can't write a song like you can or Scott can. I just don't have it in me.
Scott started all the riffs in that song. He's a force, man. I feel lucky to be. I feel lucky that he's in the project as well as you. And really, I was here to augment and help that process and add anything I could that, in my view, made the song better. And if you guys liked it and we kept it, then fantastic.
Always.
I have one question. Why, after such a huge success with Unloving Memory of and work, Ian liked to work with you. He did, I would say, some of his best work with you in the studio. Why didn't you work with him again?
I don't know exactly. I mean, I think Ian and I have met, I think 3 separate times at the beginning of doing a recording. One was for Pleasure and the Greed. We had a meeting, and then one was for pre-Albatross. I think we had talked a bit, and then another one was for something post-Albatross that I was never a part of. I think the management had less to do with it later, but I think initially we were really talking about price. For the Pleasure and the Greed, which, I mean, how apt is that? An album that was going to be called The Pleasure and the Greed. And I guess what had happened from my perspective is we put together a pretty reasonable budget based on all the evidence that we had for how people get paid to make a record of that level, right? And so we put together a budget. We thought it was pretty reasonable, and it included everything. It was right to the finish line. And the management just said, well, we have a better idea of what we think you should be paid based on the first record. Now, I'm not even going to tell you what I was paid for the first record, because it's literally embarrassing.
Right. Yeah, I know what it is, and it's peanuts, but and then
yeah. It's kind of like it's like Butch Vig's first Nirvana. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then the second album in our contract with Atlantic, and I remember at the time, I'm like, can we just not make this record and just give me a quarter of that money and I can just leave now? It was $480,000 was the budget for the second album, which is it doesn't even exist anymore. You're lucky if you get $30,000-$50,000 maybe for a big production now, right, Matt?
It's interesting you say that, because my budget was about a quarter of that, and the management were just totally insulted by my price. And then they went and worked with Beinhorn and Dave Jordan. I guess Johnny Wynot, he was the finisher in that case. Mm-hmm. Something about Ian said something about surfing. Surf's up. Dave Jordan's not around. I don't know if that's true.
Well, I have mixed feelings, because I mean, I really like the way the album sounds now and the stuff that Dave Jordan did, and I think it served the music well. It wasn't exactly what we were looking for, and at the time, I was just really unhappy. Dave was not involved. Like, you would be walking around the studio making suggestions, guiding us the whole way, like, be really, really involved. And even Chris. And then we got Dave Jordan. He was just sitting on his laptop in the back of the studio in the control room. It was a big control room. So he was like 20 feet away in the back on a couch, staring at a laptop the whole time, not even like lifting his head.
That's kind of interesting.
And I'd be like, how was that take? And he was like, it's good. That was it. I'm like, and I've learned since then that that's the way he works. He lets musicians be musicians. He doesn't want to get involved in the music or the decisions of the music, which I totally respect. And I didn't know then, but it really bothered me then, because I was used to you and myself being really opinionated, and Ian and I talking, and everyone talking and deciding things and really thinking things, and he was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. What do you think? Which is now, that is the production style. He was producing for sure, because he was there, and just like a ring wraith, he's in the background wraithing you, and you're starting to double think yourselves, and what does Dave like? We got to figure it out. So you had to figure it out.
Yeah, because I basically pushed to use him, because one of the reasons
look at his track record.
One of the reasons you weren't able to do the second record was because Atlantic wouldn't let us record unless we had an A plus producer.
That's right.
And even if you were capable and you were an A in capability, you weren't an A in name. So we had to have a name producer. Michael Beinhorn, Dave Jordan, Butch Vig. We had to have an A person do it.
Absolutely.
So I don't think you even had a chance.
But you know what? What's weird about the A person is that fans in general don't care who produced the record.
Yeah, as you found out when you were looking for girls to pay attention to you.
Yeah, I always found that, like, it's a funny reason. Like, if you're getting the result that sells records, great. But of course, In Loving Memory of didn't take off in the States as much as anyone had hoped. Maybe it was just timing. Maybe it was just a few people in marketing sitting on their hands waiting for the second record, which that happens a lot, because they couldn't control the first record, right? it was already done.
There was a lot going on at that time too, like just from like that's 2000, 2001, right? And that was rock had kind of stagnated a bit, and it became, I remember that. I remember that's when I was graduating high school, and it was kind of becoming new metal was the thing. You had the Family Values tour. It became just like about the heavy riff, the bass drop, style over substance. Rap music was fusing. That was becoming mainstream with
Corn.
with that was taking over, and then the bands had to adapt. That warmth of the creative, the early days of creating something got corporate, and it was, to me, I don't know, just from hearing this story, it sounds to me like what happens when any business loses its way, the marketing and salespeople get a hold of it. No offense to marketing and salespeople, I like marketing people. The product people get pushed aside, and the marketing people end up making all the decisions, and sometimes they don't make the right decisions. So not that album, I love that album, but from the business side, which I didn't hear anything about, like for you to have your proposal and it be a fraction of the cost, I don't know. There's a disconnect there. So, right. But there's also, and Forrest, you alluded to this too, like 2001 was not a good year for bands. No one wanted to hear that type of music in 2001, fall 2001 with 9/11, right?
Yeah, kind of. But also Nickelback started to dominate, right? You know, I mean, this is hearsay because I don't know for sure, but what my understanding is that they started to dominate to such a degree that they were signing bands that sounded remotely like them, who could have posed a threat, and then allowing them to market up to a certain level and never achieve the kind of success, the financial success of Nickelback. And for what it's worth, Nickelback wrote, great songs for a time when that audience had largely been kind of ignored, Let's call it the Meathead Revolution, because it's like meaty, nostalgic tunes, sexist at times, and at other times warm and family oriented. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting time. And of course, I guess, Scott, you were there as a fan. So like who was huge in 2000, 2001?
Well, all the bands that were huge were no longer. I mean, even U2 struggled with it. They couldn't.
Is that when they went to Apple Music and did that the free album? Or was that
2009, 2010, something like that?
Okay, yeah. There we go.
They made that, but they were huge in the 90s, right? They had their Batman soundtrack song that got a lot of the alternative crowd interested, and Pumpkins had their Batman song too in the late 90s. Like everybody was trying to find a way to.
I know Nickelback had Spider-Man.
Yes.
Oh my god.
What does that tell you? It's like DC versus Marvel, right?
Exactly. So. I don't know what happened, but there was a lot of changing of the guard, I'd say. I guess from a psychological standpoint, very male-centric. The themes were themes shifted. It became much more about like ego and machoism, and those bands represented that idea, I guess. That kind of, in my mind, there was a shift in culture that happened in 2000 for some reason. I don't know. And there's other stuff too. Like, I don't know, the record labels were on, like Sony, for example, a huge conglomerate. Mm-hmm. They have, the PlayStation comes out. They've got all of a sudden a new market of video gamers. They're focusing now on how to leverage their content on video games. And then they've got all their movies that they make. And so you see Sony recording artists now in Sony movies and in video games. Mm-hmm. It just becomes this big corporate model. I don't know. And I guess they just try to predict. Maybe they make the market, or maybe they just react to it. I don't know. But that was really, to me, that was much more obvious in the 2000s, where you started to see, this just doesn't have the depth of quality. It doesn't have the lushness of sound of that was going on in the 90s. And with this song, what I wanted to do was capture what I heard in the mid 90s, 96, 97, where you had some bands that started to self-produce, like kind of start the indie thing. Mm-hmm. Soundgarden did that with their last album. They self-produced it, and it became, I don't know if that was their time with the Ramones, but it became, to me, much more of a punk album. It was like bury the vocals more, which is like a daring move for, a singer like Cornell. It's like, let's bury that. Let's put the guitars at the front and go away from this sound that they had produced when Super Unknown. And I found that was happening quite a bit in that time period. Maybe the last time we had these huge bands that were able to self-produce, take their money and use it themselves, because that just didn't seem to happen in the 2000s. So I like that sound. I like that sort of idea of like, you get this huge breakout album, the next album, they make it more like Nirvana, more abrasive, stripped down, going back to like bare bones sound, and kind of what I wanted that to sound like that for this song that we did. Kind of that era. It was captured in maybe 96, 97 is when I heard it.
Well, it's like making heavy rock that's like kind of playable, sonically easily possible at a live show. It's kind of how I look at it.
Totally. That brings me up to one point I remember listening to when The Pleasure and the Greed first came out, and you guys were on an interview. I was in Ottawa at the time. There was like a radio premiere, and I think they were previewing some of the songs, and they had some interviews, or they said that you guys put a lot more instruments. I mean, there's a lot of vocal harmonies in it. There's a lot more instruments in that album versus the first one, which was largely something you could do live and sound pretty similar. You guys were struggling with how to put that together because you're talking banjo or banjitar, whatever it was at the time, keyboards added, so many different tracks, layers, vocal harmonies. I don't think you really had a lot of backups live. So I remember you guys were like, oh, we kind of created this problem for ourselves. We have to somehow pull it off live. So I remember hearing on that you had to cut some songs out of your set.
Mistake I had, and a couple other songs. I had 2 songs that were on a digital tape that I had to play to tape on live, which is kind of fun for a drummer. It's like, oh, I don't have to worry about tempo. I can just play to this song on a tape. But yeah, we definitely had more production than we can handle live. How did you get involved with me? What is your connection with Big Wreck?
It's pretty conventional story. As a Canadian, you have the 90s scene in Canada is largely was at that time was driven by Much Music, and they had their top 20, I think, or top 10, or once a week they'd have their videos, and you guys came up as you're always looking for like the next thing.
Yeah.
And you guys came up with the Oath. It was a good time for you to guys come out, because there was like so many people, like Soundgarden was my gateway drug into Big Wreck. You guys filled a huge void because they had broken up around that time. Canadian Soundgarden fans were looking for something to fill that void, and boom, you're there, but you weren't like, we knew well enough to know that you weren't trying to copy them in any way, but there were similar influences, and there's just a similar quality of music, but you were different image. You were educated, and that was intriguing. And there's just the sound of that first album and that first song grabbed me right away. So like many people, saw the video, bought the album, huge influence on me, and the album is great. It still holds up today. It really aged well, and I don't think I've ever heard the sound replicated anywhere by any band since then. So it's always a treat to listen to, and it always sounds new when I listen to it. I heard from people that were talking about your live shows, go to see them live. So I was able to see you live in the Warehouse in Toronto.
Oh yeah, I remember playing that.
That's when you did the Immigrant Song, I think, all together. And a lot of people were at that show too that I've connected with since then on social media. So that blew me away. And I was playing bass at the time. I was really into like Rush and Primus, as a lot of bass players get into that type of stuff, and kind of wacky stuff. That was where I started to really focus on, okay, music can be more than just crazy technical, play as fast as you can. And it can be that and melodic at the same time. You can take simple ideas and you can compound them with all kinds of layers of complexity, which is, I think, what you guys are doing really well, and introduced me to that. So that changed everything. After that, I went out and bought a guitar and started focusing on songwriting and focused on what that could be, and ripped you off pretty good in the earlier stages because I love your music so much. I snuck in a mini disc to Edgefest, and I had this terrible recording of your whole set, but I listened to it over and over again just to try to like get the guitar solos down or whatever, because there's
no way bootlegger
nothing at the time. Yeah. Like I got the original Motionless somewhere.
Wow.
Now, but yeah, so I just studied you a lot and was a huge fan. And then of course that ended, and I was always wondering like what happened to the band, right? What happened to, and Ian was he popped up not too long after that. Always a fan of his work. And then social media came up, Facebook came up, and people started to pop up. And I think I had a good idea of everybody, but you didn't know what happened to Forrest. I thought that maybe you were in real estate. I just seemed like maybe that's what you ended up doing.
I did do real estate for a couple of years.
I don't know why, but I thought Forrest is somewhere in Florida selling real estate. That's what he's doing.
Laura does real estate. She runs the Century 21 office in Charlestown, which is near Boston. And I did work with her for about a year. We went into work together, and I did do real estate for her. That was kind of the first thing that I did. Natural
fit for a lot of musicians because there's flexibility in hours and relatable to that field. So I know a lot so I just figured that's what you're doing. I don't know, but once in a while I would look and see if there's any projects I could check out, and not much going on. And then all of a sudden you popped up on Facebook because I'm part of Big Wreck online groups, and I've always been a fan of the band. And then you pop up, and it's like, oh, there he is. And so I start watching your YouTube channels, and very candid stuff. Like there's just I've never seen anything like it, where you have this band member who's willing to sort of tell their side of the story and share all the secrets that you have. And you're into this produce music at home, which is super relatable today. Everyone's trying to do that, and you're helping out, fans of the band learn how to get the sound that you got. And it was really fascinating to me. It was different. There was like a call to action you put out to here's this big rec kind of demo that you never released, some stems that I could take a look at and maybe do something with, and got together with some fans and put together a song, constructed a song out of that was basically a fan project trying to recreate that sound using those stems. And you seemed to like what I had to offer in that regard. Then we got talking about doing another one, but I was saying, well, I kind of want to do something totally new and break away from that. Like, we've done it. It was fun to do, but it would be a dream just to work together and put something out that's totally different and totally fresh and new, that would be just completely clean slate. So that's kind of how it happened. And of course, Dr. DiMatteo over there, I was lucky enough to be introduced to Matt, and the rest is history. And you guys have just blown me away since I started, and I've just been a fly on the wall, just like this interview. Like, when you guys get going, it's like, oh man, there's so much richness there for what had happened, that time capsule that I was, on the other side of it. I was a fan, neutral party, just absorbing the music that you guys had done. And now I get to hear about all the stories of how it was done.
Can you tell us more about the writing process? We kind of threw things around. You threw a big bunch of ideas at me. Did I just kind of decide, or did we decide that one was better than the other? How did we develop the song? We
are in 3 different cities and split between 2 different countries. So, as a testament to what I think your primary mission is, which is to help people learn how to do this at home. When we all have different gear, different levels of abilities in terms of recording at home and experience, I thought the best way would be, let's just send some snippets of stuff and see what you think. Does it grab you right away? So I started sending you 30-second snippets of riffs. That was the first one I sent. And I took the guitar and I went to a tuning that I thought would be simple and consistently recorded in that tuning, so that it didn't sound different. I wanted something that sounded okay. Limit myself, because I know for me personally, I'm someone who has to be bounded. Otherwise, I just go down too many rabbit holes. And that's one thing I told you, like, let's narrow the focus. What is it we're trying to do? Once upon a time, we were talking about, let's do something that sounds like Fleetwood Mac or something poppy, totally not. And then it's like, well, let's just see where things go. But I'm just the type of person I have to be bounded. I have to have like pretty clear scope in mind, and then I can narrow in on that, narrow my focus. So we did initially want to do something more contemporary. I remember that. And that was the first riff I did. It kind of always was my favorite. You liked it too. You liked some of the other stuff I sent. And then at a certain point I said, I got to go forward with sending you something a little bit more than that, a little more developed. So I had sent you similar to what ends up in the final version, although there's a lot of tweaks in between that, but fairly similar. Went back to that first riff I sent, which was what largely you hear in that song. And that just was going for the natural, obvious sound, which was very driven by like open tunings, low detuned guitars, droning notes, the stuff that you don't hear that much today from bands. You hear a lot of 7-string guitars, but not necessarily detuned open guitars today. That's what I said. And then it was a matter of you giving me feedback, and you attempted to put drums on top of it. I think maybe I sent you bass too, just a rough mix. You put the drums on it. And it surprised me, some of the choices you came up. And we had that one issue where you were on a different one than I was on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
right.
Yeah.
And 1 and 2, and 1
I
and
heard
2.
it completely different than he wrote it.
Yeah, you heard it differently, and Matt caught it, and you figured it out what was going on. And I heard it too, because I thought it was deliberate. I thought, this is something very unusual for you to play. Could this be something? Is he going for a really weird proggy thing? Yeah,
it was kind of cool.
I like it too. It was very offsetting, and
yeah. It's twisted.
Yeah, it was very twisted, twisting things around. And I thought, okay, we're not going all on the proggy math rock thing, but maybe we could do a little bit of that. That kind of informed some of the mistakes that maybe we made. It informed opportunities to go towards certain things. So why not throw in an extra bar here? Let's put a space in between and make it unexpected and unexpected change. That was informed by that. There was other things that we did that maybe weren't perfect. And then it's like, well, maybe we could use that and turn that into something. So that was cool. It was like really, truly a collaborative process at that point.
It was a long collaborative process, because I think a lot of, when you're in a room together, this stuff happens pretty quickly. You react to me, I react to you, but with sending emails and not being in the same place, it takes a long time.
It does.
Oh yeah.
I think that this song has a lot of substance in that way. And I think it's gonna take a lot longer doing it this way than getting together in the room. That's why I hope that we can all maybe get together in Toronto at some point, do three or four songs that
You're pretty heavy.
It definitely speaks to, especially because this was done at a time where you couldn't travel. Like there was limits on, we're going back to a year. I mean, the pandemic was on and there's limits to what we could do anyway. So it is challenging when you can't get in a room and build on each other's ideas. There's a delay in that. There's a waiting process. And with that, sometimes you lose that spontaneous element.
I think that collaborative part of working off each other is such a huge part of a band.
That spontaneous creativity, high level creativity that comes with being informed by what someone else is doing and then building something. You can't.
Plus original music, it sort of spills out into the street. Like it's like your daily life is informing the next song, basically.
Yeah. So, that was hard to get that to sound natural. It was really hard to do it, to make it sound, okay, we're limited with that. We don't have that option to be in the same room. But can we capture some of that through negotiating on over emails and over chat? And sometimes there was some tension and some conflict. There was things we didn't agree with.
Which is a huge important part of being in a band. I don't think you can name one great band that didn't have conflict. Or
you have to, because otherwise
a lot of conflict.
It's just groupthink at that point, and then that's boring, because it's like if everybody just agrees on everything, you're going to go always to the path of least resistance, and that's not where the true innovation lies. So it was a long time. One of the things that I was pushing for was to go more on the proggy side. It's like, I remember there was some discussion about, well, maybe we should just do something simple for this first song. Let's get it out of the way. And I kind of held my guns there and said, like, no, let's stay the course and let's do this. Let's make it a little weird. It ended up being almost 7 minutes, which was just not conventional, but maybe self-indulgent, some people might say, but why not? I mean, that's what we wanted to do. It was going to be epic.
That's why I bought the concert toms. That's why I got concert toms, so I could be self-indulgent.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's self-indulgent. I never once, it's a lot to ask for someone to listen to a song for 7 minutes, to spend 7 minutes of their life listening to your song these days. It's a lot to ask. And I appreciate anybody who listens for 7 minutes. Thank you for those 7 minutes. Comes across as self-indulgent, but I don't know. That's just what the evolution of the song ended up being. It just be stacked ideas. Maybe that's the result of songwriting this way. I don't know. It's the product of the process, I would say. I never planned any of this out. I just sent you what came to my head. Whatever you chose to do with it was going to be your thing. And most of it you didn't want to take out. There was some stuff you did, but most of it you didn't. So, okay, let's move on. That's how it ended up. There were just so many different steps like that.
And the time change, the 4/4 from the 6/8, was that two different ideas, or did that one idea come from another?
Yeah, it was two different. That's right. It was two different demos, because I didn't have a chorus for that song. I did have a chorus for it. I wrote that riff. It wasn't that riff, but I wrote those lyrics and I had them stowed away for, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Not usually the way that I write. Like, it was very dark, and it just was almost like hyperbole. It was almost ridiculous how dark those lyrics were. And I just thought, okay, that's kind of just a fun exercise to do. And I put them away. I never used them. And I did have an idea of how that song would go. And it was in 4/4. All of a sudden these lyrics came up, and I thought, well, I could use that in the 6/8 riff. Can that work? And it did fit. And then that brought me back to 4/4. I thought, well, maybe I could do the chorus in 4/4.
Cool.
And the chorus isn't the same as what I initially planned either. But that's, again, like this idea of like old ideas coming back in new ways. And that's where it came from. And I sent you that part. What do we do to get those two to come together?
A big drum fill.
Drum fill. Yeah. I think that was from like Black Hole Sun, going from the verse into the chorus. That was sort of like, let's borrow that idea.
That was
you were very, very influential. Your composition abilities to look at compositions and help guide the way there, tying these two together with like, how do we do that? Those ideas, that's when we really needed that type of expertise. And there gets to be a point where it's like, okay, we've got a scrapbook of things. Somebody needs to come together and make sense of it. So there's things you did. You took 4/4 parts and you said, why don't we try it in 6/8? And it was like, oh man, I can't imagine that. Let's try it. Totally more natural of a fit, but I didn't hear that. And that's where I think you came in a little bit later on, and then you started composing this song to make more sense of it. And then it was just, I can't even listen to it any other way now.
Yeah, there was some really amazing creative, and you don't think of editing as creative, but what you did, Matt, with like some of my drums, I hate to admit it, but one of the best fills in there. I don't think I even played. I admit it. I don't know how you did it. It was just perfect. It's just, it was creative. It just fit.
Okay, all right.
It was perfect.
But wait a second.
I'm like, I don't remember playing that, but it's perfect.
Now you got to learn it, Forrest. You got to learn that.
Oh yeah, I know it by heart now.
Okay, secret revealed. At the end of the tune, you do whatever you call it, the like the slow down to crash and burn, or whatever you call it at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the song, the original take, you go right. That's your ending. So that fill actually happens twice in the song. You just don't notice it. So right there, I doctored it. I swear, only a hair, because I was like, what is it about this fill? And I think it's like 7 even hits in the time of 6 or something like that. It was such a strange moment.
Probably an accident.
Like no one would play that on purpose, but I thought, well, this is good for anyone who's curious about like what you can do with a click track. Like there's no way you could even think of that with a click track going. So, or I mean, maybe you could. Vinny Colaiuta could, I'm sure, but it's kind of an interesting moment. I did that by accident. I was trying to find a different fill to go into that section, and it was by accident that I grabbed that batch of stuff. I stuck it there, and wherever it landed first, I was like, oh, if I just nudge that over, that's the coolest fill I've ever heard in a time of 6/8 or whatever.
Yeah.
And Matt, you were also that fill, which has become totally recognizable now. When I hear it, it's like, okay, that is like the drums moment to shine.
God damn it! The best part of the drums, I didn't even play.
You did.
No, you did. You did.
It was repurposed.
I'm kidding.
Exactly.
I don't care how you do it. It works. It works.
But you, at one point, you had told me that song reminds you of "In the Air Tonight" because
that's right.
It has a descending, like sort of pentatonic, bluesy.
Yeah, I can feel it coming in the air tonight.
Yeah. Right? And that's it.
I mean, they're pretty similar.
Yeah, and that was not intentional. You caught it, and then and so maybe somewhere there was an intention to have that Phil Collins drum.
Totally.
Song. Who knows? Yeah. But you were going with that vibe, and I wasn't going with that vibe. But it's obvious to me now that there's definitely a similarity there. It's absolutely descending. I tend to do that quite a bit. Maybe I subconsciously took that from Phil. Who knows? But that maybe was the vibe you were bringing to the song.
It's kind of interesting that something so metal in a way is interchangeable with something so pop, and you would never, even listening back to back, you would never associate the two. But it's I always find that fascinating in music. You know, like when something ragtime turns into something like, you know, pure 80s angular synthy pop or something like that, you know, electro, you know, and you go, wow, like Soft Cell doing, you know, right? Soft Cell doing that is, I mean, it's genius, you know, it sounds right. And you would never think that it would work. So yeah, I like that about it.
Okay, before the countdown starts on me again, I know what's coming. Oh, there it is. It just popped up. 10 minutes. We have 10 minutes. Although I could talk to you guys for hours, and we'll do this again. I'm going to wrap it up. It's like a dream come true again for me, because it's the first time I've worked with other people and created something that's special. and since Big Wreck. So it's like I'm reliving my dream again. And I just want to thank you guys for making that happen. Because believe me, I try to do it on my own and it just doesn't happen. I can't write. I can't
You
sing.
can write. You
I
wrote
can't
a
write.
single.
I can do what I do. I have my strengths. Scott, you have your strengths. Matt, you have your strengths. We all work together. So yeah, I definitely think we need to get together at some point.
That'd be awesome.
I guess that we're lucky. We have people that are listening. People are enjoying it. People are watching the video. Amazing job by Ruben, who was in Glue Leg. You met through Glue
Yep.
Leg, and he helped you with the Edwin stuff. He did the video. And he has a new project called Star Beast, and also Bob Guido, who did a fantastic job mastering on it. He deserves a ton of appreciation from us, and I think we keep this team going. It's not like we're on a record label and we have to use an A guy for the next video because we did really well with this one. We get to keep Ruben, and we get to keep Bob, and I get to keep Matt, and I get to keep Scott, which is great. You please do your shout outs now. You have 4 minutes.
Okay, I got a quick shout out to my cousin Alex Kriz, who's been playing the shit out of the song for all his friends, and he's a pretty big guy, so he makes them listen to it, and they now like it through forced listening. Anyway, he's a great cousin. He actually loves the track, and he's been trying to push 95X to pick it up as a single, which I mean it's pretty doubtful at almost 7 minutes. And then there's my cousin Drew, who's Alex's brother, so Drew Kriz, Alex Kriz, Paula Kriz, their mom, and Jamie Kriz, my dear aunt, all in Syracuse, New York, or at least in the surrounding area.
Oh, and one more for me, and then Scott, you got 3 minutes, 15 seconds. Laura, my beautiful, talented wife, who gets to listen to every thought that goes through my brain, good or bad, and my lack of patience with people. Thank you to her. She deserves the most credit. Okay, Scott, you go.
I'm pressed for time here, and I don't want to forget anyone, so I'm just going to say blanket statement. Thank you to my friends and family for the support. Everybody was saying, you got to go for this. These are your heroes. You got to do this and go all in on it. And I was really busy at that time with other things, but I know sometimes that was frustrating for you guys, but thanks for sticking with me. Thank you to you guys for giving me the opportunity. It's been an amazing experience. Helped and the online community too. The fellow Big Wreck fans, people that I've met through circles, and big shout out to Ruben and Bob for putting together huge parts of this project. Big thanks to them as well, and everybody that's supporting it. It's really cool that so many people are getting something out of it, and hopefully it inspires others to put some projects together of their own like this, and just not worry about anything else other than just doing some cool art and music together. So
thanks for your time, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Forrest.
Thanks.